I didn't expect my life to change that morning. There was no warning, no raised voices, no dramatic moment. Just a quiet kitchen, a half-empty cup of coffee, and my phone buzzing against the table like it had something heavy to say. The message was from my sister. "You're banned from the wedding. Mom says it's better this way." I remember blinking at the screen, waiting for the rest of the sentence. Waiting for context, an explanation. Anything that would make those words make sense. But nothing came. Just that one line, sitting there, solid and final, like a door slammed shut. This wasn't just any wedding. This was my ex-husband's wedding. The man I had been married to for 11 years. The man who divorced me less than a year ago. After telling me he needed space and wasn't himself anymore. And now my family was telling me I wasn't allowed to be there. Not invited. Not encouraged to stay away. Banned. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath until my lungs started to burn. I read the message again, slower this time, like maybe I'd misunderstood a word. But it didn't change. I typed back asking what she meant. Why, when this decision was made, who decided it? Her reply came minutes later. "It's just better if you don't come. Please don't make this harder." Harder for who? That question stayed with me long after the screen went dark. I called my mom next. She answered on the third ring, already sounding tired, like she'd been expecting the call. When I asked her why I wasn't allowed at the wedding, she sighed and said, "Honey, it would just be too emotional. For everyone. Everyone except me." Apparently. I asked her what she meant. She said we didn't need to get into it. That the past was the past. That I should focus on healing and moving on. Her voice was calm, careful, like she was choosing every word to avoid something dangerous. Nothing about it felt like concern. It felt like control. The divorce itself had already been strange. Too quiet. Too neat. There were no explosive fights, no clear betrayal I could point to. One day we were discussing weekend plans, and the next he was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes distant, saying he wasn't happy anymore. He said he needed a fresh start. I blamed myself for a long time after that. I replayed every argument. Every moment I might have missed a sign. I told myself marriages end all the time, and not every ending has a villain. I tried to be mature about it. Then, just 3 months later, he told me he was seeing someone new. "It's not serious," he said quickly, like he needed me to believe that. "It just happened." I nodded. I smiled. I pretended it didn't hurt more than I expected. Now he was getting married. Less than a year after our divorce. And my family was acting like my presence would somehow ruin everything. Something about that didn't sit right. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt that quiet, creeping feeling that something is wrong, but you can't quite explain why, you're not alone. Stories like this are why I share on Betrayal Uncovered. If this already has you wondering what you'd do in my place, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really helps, and it tells me you want to hear the whole truth. The wedding was going to be small. That's what they said, immediate family only. A quiet ceremony in a coastal town a few hours away, the kind of place people choose when they want privacy. When they want control over who sees what. I asked my sister if we could talk about it in person. She said now wasn't a good time. I asked when would be. She said, after the wedding. That answer sent a chill through me. After. Like once something happened, it would be too late to question it. I started replaying old conversations in my head. The way my ex avoided details when he talked about his new relationship. The way he never once said her name. The way my family shut down any discussion about him altogether, like he was suddenly off limits. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was just hurt and overthinking things. Divorce messes with your head. It makes you suspicious. It makes you sensitive. Anyone in my place would feel confused. Anyone would have questions. So why did it feel like no one wanted me to ask them? 2 days later, without telling anyone, I booked a vacation. Same town, same weekend. I told myself it was for closure. That I deserved a peaceful trip somewhere beautiful. That it was a coincidence. But deep down there was a quiet pull I couldn't ignore. A need to see things with my own eyes. As I packed my suitcase, my hands were shaking. Not with anger. With uncertainty. With the feeling that I was stepping toward something I wasn't ready to understand. I didn't know what I was walking into yet. I just knew one thing for sure. They didn't want me there for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it hadn't happened by accident. After I booked the trip, the tension I'd been holding in my chest only grew heavier. Like a storm building in the distance that I couldn't see but could feel in the air. Every day leading up to the wedding, my ex-husband's behavior shifted in ways I couldn't ignore. He was distant. Not the "I need space" kind of distant from the divorce, but a new, sharper distance that set off alarms in my chest. Short replies, delayed texts, an almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw when I spoke to him. When I mentioned the overlapping dates, he said calmly, almost too calmly, "That town is big enough for both of us." But his eyes flickered, and the way he said it didn't match the words. There was something unspoken. Something he wasn't telling me. I tried to convince myself it was normal. I told myself I was being paranoid. Divorce twists your perception. It makes you jump at shadows and read secrets into silence. Anyone in my place would have felt the same tension, I told myself over and over, because I wanted so badly to believe I was imagining things. But as the days went on, tiny details started accumulating, piling up into a mountain of unease. There were the little things, innocent enough at first glance, but impossible to ignore now. He never used her name. Never once. He spoke in pronouns when mentioning her. She. That woman. Like saying her name aloud might somehow break something fragile. When I tried joking about the speed of his engagement, he didn't laugh. He simply said, "You wouldn't understand," and walked away. Those words, casual as they sounded, lingered in my mind for days. My family wasn't helping. In fact, they were making everything worse. Group chats went silent when I asked about the wedding plans. Texts I sent asking innocent questions about the location or timing were ignored, read receipts showing that they'd been seen, and then nothing. My sister, who I'd confided in for years, stopped sending photos of everyday things. She became distant in ways I couldn't explain. My mom suddenly claimed she had bad reception. Whenever I tried to call, it wasn't just me imagining it anymore. Something was coordinated. Something was being carefully controlled. It made me question everything I thought I knew. I found myself doubting myself constantly. Had I been overreacting all along? Was I reading patterns that weren't really there? But every instinct I had screamed that something was off. Every warning light I thought I'd buried under years of logic and compromise was flashing red. Then came the small, subtle reveals. The ones that were barely noticeable until I stepped back and looked at them together. A mutual friend ran into me at the grocery store. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, and then she hesitated, eyes darting around as if she was trying to decide whether to speak. "So are you okay with everything?" she asked. Her voice was tight, almost conspiratorial. I asked her what she meant. She flushed, glanced away, and said, "It's just sudden, you know." She trailed off, leaving the rest of the thought unspoken. When I pressed her for clarity, she shook her head. "I probably shouldn't get involved." And just like that, the seed of doubt dug itself deeper. I drove home that night with a knot in my stomach. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white. I replayed memories I'd once brushed off. Late nights he insisted he was working in the garage. Weekends my sister was suddenly unavailable without explanation. The way she defended him when I cried. Telling me I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. What had once felt like coincidence now felt like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. I spent the next few days in a fog, oscillating between denial and fear. I wanted to believe the easiest explanation, that I was being paranoid. But no matter how much I tried, something deep inside me whispered that these were not accidents. Something was being hidden from me. Something important. And everyone around me was complicit. Even in moments of quiet alone in my apartment, I felt eyes on me. Not literally, but as if the walls themselves were keeping secrets, and I wasn't supposed to uncover them. Every phone call left me anxious. Every vague response from my family felt like a warning. I started noticing patterns I had ignored for years. Conversations that didn't make sense. Moments I'd excused in the past suddenly appearing suspicious in hindsight. By the time I got to the coast for my trip, the unease had escalated into something heavier, almost suffocating. I tried to calm myself, telling myself I was there for a vacation, to breathe, to see the ocean. And I was, partly. But another part of me was there for something else, something I couldn't name yet. The hotel room felt impossibly small that first night. I unpacked mechanically, avoiding the window at first. Avoiding the view of the town where everyone else was gathered. The thought that they were all somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, doing things I wasn't supposed to see, pressed on me with a weight I couldn't shake. Then came the subtle but unmistakable signs that my suspicion was not misplaced. A welcome sign at the hotel, written in my mom's familiar handwriting, thanking guests for coming. A tiny detail, but it made my stomach twist. They were already closer than I had realized, more coordinated, more in sync than I had imagined. All the careful instructions, the hidden messages, the deliberate silences, they weren't for convenience. They were for concealment. That night, lying on the bed, I tried to quiet my thoughts. I tried to tell myself that it was okay, that I didn't need to see everything. I told myself I was imagining things. But I couldn't ignore the feeling crawling under my skin, twisting my gut into knots. I couldn't ignore the sense that they were hiding someone from me, someone important. Sleep didn't come. And when it did, it was restless and full of fragmented dreams, visions of him, of my sister, of faces I didn't recognize but felt ominously familiar. When I woke, my heart was racing. My entire body felt taut, like a wire stretched too tight waiting to snap. I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. If I said a word, if I even hinted at my suspicions, I would have been dismissed, or worse, told I was overreacting. But deep inside, I knew. I felt it in my bones. They were hiding something from me. Something that mattered. Something that explained why I was banned. Something that would make me question everything I had thought I knew about my family, my ex, and the life I had built around them. And I knew one thing with certainty as I stared out at the dark waves that night: the wedding, the people, the secrets, they were all waiting. And I was about to see the truth, whether I was ready for it or not. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. The ocean outside my hotel window was gray and restless, mirroring the turmoil inside me. I had tried to sleep, to convince myself this was just a vacation, that the world outside my room wasn't connected to the storm building in my chest. But I couldn't. Every shadow on the walls seemed alive, moving with purpose. Every distant sound, the faint clang of a boat, a gull calling, felt like it was warning me. I told myself repeatedly that I wouldn't go near the venue. I wasn't there to spy. I wasn't there to confront anyone. I had told myself this trip was about breathing, about reclaiming a small piece of calm in my life. But as soon as I opened my eyes, the pull toward the wedding was irresistible. Not curiosity alone, something deeper, something that had been whispering to me for weeks, growing louder each day, insisting that I see, that I understand. I left my hotel quietly, pretending I was going for a walk, but my car led me toward the harbor anyway. The streets were nearly empty, the town still asleep, giving me a false sense of anonymity. I parked several blocks away and walked, my head down, hands stuffed into my coat pockets. The closer I got, the more my chest throbbed with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Music drifted faintly in the distance, soft, melodic, celebratory. Laughter, clinking glasses, the unmistakable hum of a gathering that had been carefully curated, meticulously arranged. It was all normal, harmless, even beautiful to anyone else. But to me, it felt wrong. Every laugh felt like it was directed against me, every smile a silent accusation. And then I saw him. My ex. He was greeting people as they arrived, shaking hands, hugging relatives, adjusting his jacket with a meticulous, almost desperate attention to detail. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the same practiced smile I had once used to cover my own anxiety, but on him, it looked fragile, like a mask stretched too thin. I froze for a second, barely breathing, watching him move through the crowd with careful precision. He wasn't expecting me, and that fact made the world feel impossibly small. I tried to convince myself to leave, to retreat, but my feet kept moving forward. My heart hammered, and my pulse was deafening in my ears. I watched my family interact with him. My mom hugged him longer than necessary, lingering as if to remind herself, that they were on the same side. My sister fussed with his collar, laughing softly, whispering things only they would understand. They looked like a team, like a well-oiled machine. And I wasn't in it. Never again. I remembered moments from the past, small and seemingly insignificant, that now aligned in an eerie, horrifying pattern. The late-night calls he claimed were work. The weekends my sister suddenly had plans. The way she smiled at him when I cried. The way my mother always brushed aside my instincts as oversensitivity. I had excused all of it. Told myself I was imagining patterns that didn't exist. But now, standing here, I realized I had been paying attention all along. I just didn't know what I was seeing. The guests began to take their seats. Music shifted. The air was electric with anticipation. I lingered across the street, pretending to check my phone, watching. My breath caught as I tried to see down the aisle without being noticed. My hands shook violently, and I had to grip them together to steady myself. And then, just as the officiant began speaking, she appeared. The bride. I caught a glimpse of the dress first. Simple, elegant, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I didn't recognize her from memory, but something about her presence, the way she carried herself, set off alarms in my mind. It was the subtle familiarity of posture, of movement, that made my stomach knot and my throat go dry. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that this was just my anxiety playing tricks on me. But the flashes began, tiny, disjointed images from months ago, even years ago, collided in my mind. Her laugh, a voice in the kitchen I hadn't recognized at the time. A shadow in the background of photos I thought I hadn't noticed. Memories that had once seemed random or insignificant now clicked into place with brutal clarity. My knees went weak. My chest felt hollow. Fear clawed at me, but curiosity held me rooted in place. My ex reached for her hands, his smile now unguarded, full of relief, of ease, of ownership. And every cell in my body screamed that something inside me had just broken forever. The bride turned slightly, enough for me to catch a partial glimpse of her face. My heart stopped. Not completely, but just enough that time seemed to stretch. A sudden recognition washed over me, cold and sharp. That walk, that posture, that tilt of the head. Flashbacks collided with the present in a way that made my stomach twist. Everything that had seemed strange, the secrecy, the vague warnings, the orchestrated silences suddenly made horrifying sense. Whatever I had sensed for weeks, months even, was real. They had been hiding someone, protecting someone, and I had been too blind, too trusting, or too naive to see it until now. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Part of me wanted to look away, to run, to erase the realization before it could fully sink in. But I couldn't. I needed to see this through, even if it destroyed me in the process. I edged closer, trying to stay unseen, desperate for clarity, desperate for confirmation. My breathing was ragged, shallow, and loud in my own ears. Every step brought the pieces together, every movement brought the truth closer. And then, just before she turned fully toward the aisle, I caught the last piece. A fleeting glimpse of her eyes. And in that moment, I knew with a bone, deep certainty, why I was never supposed to be there. Everything I had felt, every warning and hesitation, every quiet doubt and lingering suspicion, had been building to this single, unbearable truth. The bride, this person everyone was so careful to hide from me, was someone I never could have imagined. Someone I had known, someone I had trusted, someone whose presence in my life now felt like a knife twisting inside my chest. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was frozen, my mind a tornado of shock, disbelief, and a raw, piercing fear. My past, my family, my ex, my sister, it all snapped into a new, horrifying alignment, and I realized, in a way that left me trembling, that nothing would ever be the same again. The aisle stretched before her, the crowd rose, and the moment hung in the air. I was poised on the edge of discovery, and the world felt impossibly still. I was about to see everything. She turned her head fully as she reached the end of the aisle, and for a moment, the world itself seemed to tilt. Time slowed. Every laugh, every clink of glasses, every soft murmur of the crowd faded into a dull hum. My stomach twisted, my chest tightened, and I felt as if I'd been holding my breath for years, only to realize the air I needed had vanished. And then I saw her face. It was my sister. Not a cousin. Not a friend I'd misplaced in memory, not someone I had assumed was distant. It was her, my sister, the one I had shared secrets with for decades, the one who had stood beside me through heartbreaks, school recitals, birthdays, and the darkest nights of my marriage. She was the bride. She was the reason everyone had been so careful. The reason I had been banned. The reason my family had built walls I couldn't climb. My heart stopped. My mind raced, trying to process something that seemed impossible, something that logic refused to accept. I felt a dizzying mix of shock, rage, and an icy, hollow fear. I couldn't breathe. The world around me seemed unreal. As if it had become a stage, and I was suddenly an audience member in someone else's carefully scripted life. Flashbacks came in a tidal wave. The late nights he claimed were work, when I had peeked and seen her in the kitchen. The weekends she said she was busy, helping a friend, when really, she was with him. Every time my sister smiled at him while I was crying, every time my mother told me to let it go, it all rewrote itself in a horrifying new light. They had been protecting her, orchestrating everything, keeping me blind to the truth. My hands shook violently. My knees went weak. I felt the urge to scream, but no sound came. I wanted to run, to escape, to disappear into the streets, and pretend I hadn't just seen the person who had betrayed me in a way I never thought possible. But I didn't move. Part of me was frozen by disbelief, part of me driven by the need to understand. My ex-husband reached for her hands, smiling like he had never smiled before. A smile that was unguarded, effortless, claiming something that I once thought was mine. And my family, who I had trusted implicitly, watched and smiled, complicit, proud, like this was all perfectly natural. That's when I realized. They weren't hiding this because they were protecting anyone from awkwardness or hurt feelings. They were hiding it because I had been the only one who might have stopped it, questioned it, or seen the truth before it unfolded. The truth hit me in a sharp, cold wave. The divorce hadn't been clean. The speed, the distance, the sudden need for space, none of it had been random. It had been a carefully planned separation, orchestrated to keep me from seeing what was coming. And now, standing there, I understood that everything I had felt, every instinct, every unease, every doubt that had gnawed at me for months, had been right. I drove back to my hotel afterward without saying a word to anyone. I couldn't. My body was still shaking. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly I thought I might leave fingerprints in the leather. I didn't cry. Not yet. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring straight ahead at the road, numb, as if trying to will my heart to stop racing. Later that evening, 2 police officers arrived at the hotel lobby, calm and professional, asking for my ex-husband. I watched them from my room window, heart hammering. I didn't call them. I didn't plan this. I hadn't interfered. But the fact that they were there, purposeful, deliberate, felt like confirmation that the life I had thought I knew had been full of hidden layers, lies, and choices I couldn't have imagined. In the days that followed, my family's silence was deafening. My sister vanished from my life completely. Calls went unanswered. Texts ignored. My ex-husband attempted apologies, explanations, rewritten versions of reality that sounded hollow and rehearsed. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth had already revealed itself. And once it did, no amount of words could erase the reality I had just witnessed. The most painful part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the clarity that followed. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped replaying every moment, every argument, every tiny interaction. I realized that some things break not because we failed, but because they were never built on honesty. Lies and secrecy had been the foundation of their choices, not my shortcomings. I started reflecting on everything I had experienced, the quiet suspicions, the subtle red flags, the moments that had felt wrong but I couldn't explain. For years I had doubted myself, wondering if I had imagined it all. But now I understood that my instincts had been right. They had been valid. I had not been overreacting. I had been paying attention to truths that were deliberately hidden from me. There is a strange kind of freedom in that realization. Painful, yes, and bitter, but freeing. Once you see the full extent of betrayal, you stop searching for excuses. You stop holding on to illusions. You recognize that the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who orchestrated the deception. And then, finally, you can step forward without them. Sharing this story on Betrayal Uncovered isn't just catharsis for me. It's a reminder to anyone watching that instincts matter, that unease is valid, and that secrecy often hides more than we want to see. If you've ever felt blindsided, confused, or betrayed by someone you trusted, know that your doubts are not crazy. They may be the first sign of a truth waiting to be uncovered. I can't change what happened. I can't undo the choices they made. But I can acknowledge them, accept the pain, and move forward with clarity. The hardest part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the moment you realize it's real. And the moment you finally understand the truth, you realize how strong you've been all along, even if you didn't know it. I'd like to hear from you. If this story resonated, if it reminded you of someone in your life, or helped you put words to your own experience, leave a comment. Tell me how you would have handled it. And if this story hits close to home, share it with someone who truly understands what it feels like to be betrayed, to be blindsided, and to finally see the truth for yourself. Because sometimes, knowing the truth is the only way to start healing.